Patriots camp. Rookie quarterback Drake Maye showing some improvement after a couple of rough days in pads. Veteran Jacoby Brissett, of course, returns to New England as a very steady option to start at QB. And what about rookie Joe Milton getting a lot of buzz?
I don't think about it much at all. I'm just trying to worry about myself and worry about what I control. Looking forward to getting in there in a preseason game. And right now, practice, we're trying to take advantage of the reps that I do get and try to make the most of them.
The best thing that he's doing is putting one foot in front of the other, going back out there and going out there and competing. And the plays are going to make themselves. It's just about doing the little things day in and day out. That's going to give you a chance to make the right play.
Also, we know Mac Jones, he's gone to the Jaguars. Bailey Zappe's also in that quarterback room. The Patriots' struggles at quarterback go back to Tom Brady's departure in 2020. Since he left for Tampa, Patriots quarterbacks have the third worst touchdown to interception ratio, the fourth worst QBR, and the sixth fewest passing yards per game. Patriots reporter Mike Reese joins us now with more from Foxborough. Mike, what is the latest on how these QBs have looked so far in camp?
Hannah, the Patriots finished their 8th practice of training camp today. Very hot out here. And if we go back to what head coach Jerod Mayo said before this all began, that if Drake Maye lights it up, he could be the starter in week 1. And I can tell you, having been at all 8 practices, we haven't seen the light show from Drake Maye. There have been highlights, however, like yesterday, a great touchdown pass right here on the back line of the end zone to KJ Osborne. But to be clear, this is still Jacoby Brissett's job, the veteran, the #1 starter right now for the Patriots, in Mayo's own words, saying he's our most pro-ready quarterback. Hannah?
Thanks to Mike Bree. So, Tim, what is your ideal timeline? I mean, they have the luxury of Jacoby Brissett there available to start. When would you, though, like to see Drake Maye start?
As soon as possible, Hannah. And, they do have the benefit of having a true pro and Jacoby Brissett there. And I think it's good for all players, anyone playing that position, to learn from someone like Jacoby Brissett. But quarterback's the hardest position in all of sports, and you generally get better at it by playing it. And so I think this idea of it not being a super talented roster in New England to maybe make it a red shirt type of year for Drake Maye, I think that would be a mistake. Look, if you don't want to start him week 1, fine. I'd be fine with that. But I don't see any reason why Drake Maye is not the starting quarterback by week 4 at the absolute latest, unless you're running into issues that, like, he can't call the play in the huddle, which, quite frankly, I don't think you're going to run into that type of stuff with Drake Maye. I think you need to get out there, let him play, let him learn on the job. I think that's the easiest and best way to learn to play at the pro level.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned, I think, the reason I hear the most for why Drake Maye shouldn't start, which is the lack of talent on the roster. I'm kind of two opinions about that. I actually have a little bit more optimism than some when it comes to the group of skill players. Starting with, you have a new offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt. This is going to be a more outside zone-centric run game. I actually think that's a really good fit for Ramondre Stevenson, pardon me. And as far as the wide receivers go, Jalen Polk, the rookie, has excellent hands, which is a good fit for Maye, who will attack downfield and attempt difficult throws. I think Pop Demario Douglas has a lot of juice and yards after the catch potential, so I like him as well. And Javon Baker, another rookie, I think has true upside as an ex-receiver. So I'm surprised if that group of players is actually better than some expect. Where I get a little bit nervous is the offensive line. And looking at that depth chart, I have some concerns, particularly about the tackle position. But I'll say this about Drake Maye. Anyone who watched his college tape last year knows this. He is accustomed to playing behind, shall we say, lackluster pass protection. So I actually think that wouldn't be a crazy adjustment for him, even though it is more challenging, of course, in the NFL.
Kind of unfortunate for him that he has that qualification, of course, Mina, but he is a #3 pick. What would you like to see them under Van Pelt do offensively? What do you think the best strategy is, Bill?
I really think it's about playing complementary football, and that is not just about the offense, but also putting the defense in position to win games. This defense was quietly, nobody was watching, but really good last year during the second half. #1 in the NFL in points allowed per drive without Matt Judon, without Christian Gonzalez, their excellent young cornerback, and with the worst average starting field position of any team in football, 3rd worst over the last decade. They started their average drive on the 34-yard line, which means the defense had shorter fields to guard than anybody else in football. And the offense can help that by not turning the ball over. And when you look at Jacoby Brissett, the thing he does best as a quarterback is protect the football. He has an interception rate below 1.5%. Since the NFL, the only quarterback with a better interception rate than Jacoby Brissett is Aaron Rodgers. So if the Patriots want to compete early, I understand getting Drake Maye in there certainly, but this is an offense where if they can just protect the football, get the ball back to their defense, and drives with the kick, extra point, punt, or, you do that, you're going to be competitive because this defense is really high caliber.
We're going to begin in LA with Justin Herbert, diagnosed Wednesday with a plantar fascia injury in his right foot. The team put out a statement that said doctors have recommended approximately 2 weeks in a boot, followed by a graduated return to play protocol with the expectation that he will be ready for the start of the regular season. Tim, unfortunately, you have had this injury. How concerning is it?
Yeah, me and a lot of other Americans. Look, here's what I would say. Like some people here, I don't think it's a big deal for Justin Herbert on the season because you can shoot it up during the year. He is a tough guy, played through broken ribs and things of that nature. So I'm not worried about it in terms of how it will impact him. Not ideal, obviously, learning a new offense, but I don't think it bothers him during the season.
Yeah, all of these injuries are happening with players in new coaching situations. Let's go on to the Titans, where star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins suffered a knee injury during practice this week, and the initial reports suggest that their number one receiver is now going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Bill, how big of a deal is this for young Will Levis and the Titans?
It really hurts them for a few reasons. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is still a very good football player, ranked in the top 20 among wideouts last year in yards per route run, but now it stretches the other receivers in this offense. Calvin Ridley was going to be in that Jamar Chase role for Brian Callahan, moving around the formation, trying to find those weak spots. Now he might have to play the X role and be that DeAndre Hopkins receiver where he struggled in Jacksonville. Maybe they get Treylon Burks back, but certainly you'd rather have Hopkins on the field for your young quarterback in week 1 if possible.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd there as well. At least they're deep at that position. Okay, as for the Seahawks, really some positive news. Geno Smith, quote, should not miss any time, a source tells our Adam Schefter, after the quarterback missed 2 team practices with knee and hip injuries. Testing on those injuries thankfully did not show anything significant. Meanwhile, the Hawks have made some changes. They brought in a couple of new QBs to back up Geno Smith and Sam Howell and P.J. Walker. They shored up that O-line. They brought in George Fant, Laken Tomlinson. They drafted Byron Murphy to help anchor that defensive line for their new head coach, Mike McDonald. So, Mina, good news on the injury front. New head coach, new OC, and Ryan Grubb, who comes from UW. What do you envision for Geno this season?
Well, I want to start by saying I think Geno Smith is one of the most underrated players in football. I get asked a lot, did he regress last year? Why did he regress? Why did he struggle compared to the year before? And frankly, on tape, he was just as good, accurate, aggressive, showed the mobility both inside and outside the pocket that really has impressed me over the last couple of years. If he struggled, and when he struggled, it's very easy to explain. I brought these numbers up before, but they're really worth emphasizing. On first and second down, Geno Smith was one of the best quarterbacks in football. Second in QBR, fifth in QBR, second in EPA per dropback. Then on third down, those numbers dropped precipitously. Why did they drop? Because he was pressured 47% of the time, despite not having a particularly long time to throw. That is a non-functional situation for any quarterback. Now, to go back to your question, whether or not he can be better, whether or not the offense can succeed, a lot of it hinges on whether the offensive line can be better. Geno might be healthy, but the right tackle, Abe Lucas, is still battling injuries, and that is a concern of mine because as you saw there, I really believe it was the lack of pass protection on third down that at times caused troubles for this offense.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mina. I think to credit Geno's success a couple years ago to the coaching staff and not to the fact that he's a guy that was thrown kind of into the fire as a young player, has seen a bunch of different offenses. I think it's unfair to Geno. I would agree with you that he's probably one of the more underrated and appreciated players, not just quarterbacks, in the National Football League. So I actually think that step that he took a couple years ago, I think he's continued to play and just kind of put it into some numbers as well. has continued to play really well. I expect that same thing to happen even with a change. So, I think some of it, and certainly the offensive line play will affect any quarterback. Kenneth Walker's a really good back. I expect them to run the ball fairly well. They've got a good receiving core. They certainly are adequate at tight end. And I think Geno's a quick processor, and I think that he does a good job of playing on time. And when you do that and you stay on schedule, it's easy to have success. And I think it's part of the success he's had in recent years.
Yeah, Mina mentioned Abe Lucas, the right tackle, being out. This is a line in transition on the interior as well. 3 new starters from last year. Damian Lewis, Phil Haynes, both gone. Evan Brown, the center left. That interior is really starting over for Seattle and Geno Smith. And I'm a little concerned, or at least intrigued, I should say, about how the offense Ryan Grubb ran at Washington translates to Geno Smith and this particular Seahawks offensive line in 2024. Michael Penix, over 62% of the time last year, Michael Penix was running plays with 5 receivers running out into routes, which means only 5 people blocking for the quarterback. So you want a quick processor, to Tim's point back there. And Sam Howell, whatever athleticism he had, whatever he showed last year, don't know that he's quite on that level. So hopefully you can get Geno Smith back on the field as quickly as possible to work behind a makeshift and really rebuilding offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, he was pressured on 35% of his dropbacks. To your earlier point, Mina, before we move on from the Hawks, we have to talk about Mike Macdonald. He comes in to shore up this defense, hopefully replicate what he did in Baltimore, really resurrecting that defense in a short amount of time. What are your expectations on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think they'll be better, Hannah, because there is a lot of talent on this defense, particularly in the secondary. I'm so excited to see what Mike Macdonald does with Devin Witherspoon in particular. Defensive tackle was already a strength. They added Byron Murphy Jr. The weaknesses in my mind are linebacker and at edge. But one thing Macdonald was so good at in Baltimore was getting a pass rush without having elite edge rushers. So if he can approximate that in Seattle, I think they could take a significant leap from what we saw last season.